Hello, role-playing people, and in this episode we're taking a look at the Defiler's lore of storms, their ability to conjure, control, and become water, as well as their ability to manipulate or even create, summon weather patterns, culminating with the potential to generate a raging storm of varying scale. This lore reflects the first task of Nereids, a task I'm not sure we fully understand, in a time in which there was no one to inspire just yet. Some Defilers claim water was the primordial element of everything, the first physical substance to come into existence even before the malefactors created earth and stone, or spun matter into a dense globe with a fiery core decorated with peaks and canyons and dry river beds. According to the fifth house, water was first, all around, and out of that primordial ocean, the malefactors raised earth and stone to clearly differentiate between being and non-being. What does that say about water? Is it closer to the abyss in some way? Now, the Defilers are predominantly known for their activity as muses, but what about the original Nereids, the architects of the restless deeps? We know they brought a sense of transitoriness to the world, a sense of unpredictability, some would even say chaos, where before there was only perfectly precise, repetitive motion throughout the entire cosmos, as designed by the fiends. We know their element covered almost the entirety of the malefactor's own preferred substance, not just on surface level, and water in its various forms beautifully bridges a gap between the earth and the domain of air, traveling to and fro, changing the interaction between the two. Even the Slayer's haven, their underworld isle of sorrows, is surrounded by some kind of water, some kind of restless ocean, and engulfed in storm, in tempest. Why is that? Why did malefactors give Defilers dominion over waters to such extent, and why did devils grant them control over lightning? But perhaps the most worrisome question is, why do some of the restless deeps remember being tasked by the giver herself, not Michael, but the giver herself, with the eventual destruction of the world? When was that request made? Was it before the fall, or does it refer to the deluge of biblical myth? Could this great flooding of the world have been part of the divine plan all along? The only thing we know for sure is that, in the world of Demon the Fallen, water is a very mysterious element which seems to be at the intersection of all other fields and domains. It is populated by living beings, flora and fauna. It travels through the earth as well as above it. It rises into the air, into clouds, into storms. It takes many forms, and any form, really. It reflects or warps and waves light playfully. It even flows into the lands, or should I say the oceans of the dead. And if this ever-presence of water doesn't reflect the Nereids' need to be seen, discovered, important to the humans they were only allowed to love from afar, then I don't know what is. But without further ado, let's read some evocations. Summon water. The demon can summon water from any nearby source, causing anything from a sudden, concealing fog to a torrential flash flood. System. Roll stamina plus survival. The number of successes required depends on the amount of water the Defiler wishes to summon. If the demon wants to call up a thick fog, increasing the difficulty of all perception rolls by 2, 1 success is sufficient. If she wants to douse the area with a sudden shower, 2 successes are required. If she wants a torrent of water, 3 successes are necessary. A raging flood demands 4 successes or more. Individuals caught in such a torrent or flood suffer the effects of drowning unless a successful Dexterity plus Athletics difficulty 8 roll is made. There has to be a water source of some kind within Faith in yards, no matter how small, for this evocation to work. The effects of this evocation continue for a number of turns equal to the character's Faith score. Torment. The water that a monstrous demon summons is slimy and foul, spreading sickness and disease. Victims exposed to this polluted water risk developing deadly diseases that manifest within days or weeks. Mortals and demons exposed to this tainted water for more than one turn risk becoming infected unless a stamina roll is made with a difficulty equal to the Defiler's Torment. Also use the Defiler's Torment to gauge the relative virulence of any diseases. A Torment score of 7 inflicts a minor disease that might lower the character's dice pools, while a Torment of 10 imposes a lethal and possibly highly contagious disease that inflicts lethal damage. For more information on diseases and their effects, see page 262 of the Systems chapter. I like the idea of this evocation, and heavens, being able to create a sudden flood is quite a feat, undoubtedly. But as with the Lore of the Flame, I need to point out that destroying people's properties, vehicles, the water installations in their houses, potentially drowning them in their own basements, should earn the character some torment depending on their current torment rating, because the effects are clearly used in a destructive way. Something else I'm wondering about is the necessity of a water source. Water is all around. The air we breathe has a certain degree of humidity and moisture, and, well, certainly when it comes to torrents and floods, I can see why you'd need a bigger and better source. But for conjuring up a fog or vapors, I don't see why a man-made water source would be necessary. When it comes to using this evocation in more benevolent ways, even if the as-written description doesn't say this, I would say purifying water should also be something the Defiler can do, maybe being able to alter the state of water, liquid to solid to vapor, or the water's temperature. That would be really nice for a prolonged, warm, sensual bath. Or dehydrating/drying various things quickly, from clothes to foods. If the location itself allowed it, we know humanity has been drying foods as a means of preserving them since 12,000 BC, alright? So there's a lot of things the Defiler could do beyond bursting all your pipes, destroying your house, and maybe drowning you in the middle of the night. But when it does come to using water as a weapon, yeah, we can see the high torment effects are not exactly immediate or reliable, since they depend on torment ratings, stamina rolls, and the effects manifest within days or even weeks. Oh, come on. If my Defiler's life is threatened and I need to fight back, I don't need my attacker to suffer disease a week later. I need them disabled right now. I like the idea of poisonous infected water, since I think it plays a bit into the environmentalist themes of Demon, which are there for sure, but why wouldn't the Defiler simply suck so much moisture out of a living target that it induces almost instant severe dehydration? The mouth is so dry and swollen, the target cannot speak. Their head is spinning and pounding. That dehydration headache is a jackhammer to the skull. They are extremely dizzy, so they can barely stand, and with enough successes, bam, stroke or heart failure. Or quite the opposite, their body fills with water, inducing water toxicity. The kidneys are on the highway to hell, but not before the target feels an intense swelling of the stomach, like they were forced to drink 3 liters of water in a few seconds. They cannot help but be unable, disabled, crouched on all fours as they heave and vomit, seemingly endless torrents of water. Dear heavens, how did all this water get inside of them? So overall, I I like this evocation, but simply being able to summon water from a nearby source without being able to control it, without being able to purify it, without being able to change its state, its temperature, adding or removing humidity from nearby things, it seems to me like this evocation doesn't put enough tools in the player's toolbox. Next dot. Water form. This evocation allows a Defiler to transform her physical body into water, either as a liquid or as a mist. System. Roll stamina plus medicine. Once transformed, the character leaves her clothes and possessions behind. She can travel anywhere water or air can reach while in water or mist form, and she is immune to any damage. The Defiler can remain in this form for a number of turns equal to her faith score. Torment. The water form of a monstrous demon is polluted by its torment, and contact with it causes chemical burns. For each turn that a victim is exposed to the Defiler's body, she suffers 1 health level of lethal damage. Very nice. So at this level, the Defiler can turn into water or mist, is immune to all damage, and doesn't need to consume things in order to stay in this form, like the Nusku need to do to stay in their flame form. So this is great, but on the downside, this only lasts for a few turns at a time, and the character will inevitably end up naked upon reassuming their mortal form. So a bit of planning ahead might come in handy when using this ability. However, given the lore of Transfiguration or other lores that might assist with this, I think nudity is a small price to pay for being indestructible, being able to infiltrate any place, slither through any crack, and of course escape any form of mundane restraints, handcuffs, armored vehicles, inmate transports, jail cells, toilets, you name it. A Defiler using this ability cannot be contained or restrained by mundane means in any way, which is fantastic. The High Torment form is pretty much playing on the idea of very strong acid rain, torment as a form of pollution, and let me say, being indestructible while burning any living thing you come into contact with is insanely powerful. Basically, the only thing anyone can do when confronted with a tormented Defiler in this form is to somehow attack its store of faith or run for their life, because fighting a living, moving acid puddle is not an option here. We can still imagine this water form isn't exactly swift and doesn't move too quickly, so definitely running and changing strategy is the best thing anyone can do. I'm not sure being immune to all forms of damage is fair here, but I guess each storyteller can tweak that and set some boundaries everyone in the group can agree upon. Lastly, if players aren't too fond of the chemical burns idea, we can attribute the damage dealt by the Defiler's water form to rapid changes in temperature depending on the Defiler's emotional state. Why not? Maybe in anger, this puddle is boiling, scorching hot, somewhere between liquid and vapor, and maybe if the character is detached, cold in their torment, the liquid freezes after it's enveloped its victim or a part of their body, and it expands as razor-sharp ice crystals cut, stab into the victim's flesh, expanding inward, leaching its body heat, frostbiting and necrotizing tissues very rapidly, maybe acting like liquid nitrogen. I always encourage my players to get creative with the descriptions, especially since their character is receiving torment for this, right? So the players are sacrificing something and hurting the character in a moment of rage or desperation when more power is needed. Mechanically, each turn of exposure bestows lethal damage onto the victim, which can come in many ways, really, not just chemical burns. So by all means, enjoy the scene, feel that torment coursing through the character and describe it as you wish. Next dot. Manipulate weather. This evocation allows the Defiler to nudge existing weather patterns, pushing away storm fronts or drawing them to her with surprising speed, and altering the local temperatures. System. Roll intelligence plus science. The number of successes achieved determines the severity of the weather pattern that the Defiler can manipulate. Affecting a minor rainstorm requires only 1 success, while affecting a thunderstorm requires 2. Major storms require 3 successes to manipulate, and truly powerful phenomena such as tornadoes or hurricanes require 4 or more. Alternatively, the Defiler can raise or lower the temperature in her area by a degree per success rolled. This evocation affects an area with a radius in miles equal to the demon's faith score. Note that all weather manipulated must be present. This power cannot spontaneously create new weather effects. Torment. Monstrous demons increase the intensity of local weather patterns rather than alter their course, turning a spring shower into a raging tornado or a light snowfall into a blizzard. The muses of the 5th house might be artists, but those of the storms are quite methodical in their so-called chaos or fickleness. And they have to be, because their element helps maintain a delicate balance. If balance is not kept properly and water doesn't travel like it should, things die. It's no wonder you see so many rituals designed to invoke or conjure rain in a lot of faiths worldwide. Rain is important. With this evocation, the Defiler can redirect, amplify, or diminish the strength of a certain meteorological phenomenon, as well as increasing or lowering the temperature in a radius in miles equal to faith score. That's amazing. Do not underestimate the usefulness of this. Turning a little rain on a somewhat cloudy day into a raging thunderstorm impacts everything. It might disrupt people's activities, it might impact traffic, it might lead to power outages, it might lead to the streets being flooded and icky stuff coming out of the sewers. Alternatively, diminishing or redirecting a meteorological effect to the point that it doesn't disrupt people's activities or destroys things is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And again, I think the intelligence plus science roll makes sense because most storms work in very clear ways. You have your updraft, the air fills up with water evaporated from the earth, travels upwards, forms clouds which grow and keep filling with water, then they hit cold air from the upper parts of the atmosphere, downdraft, water falls back down onto the earth. Oh, but not just. The warm water going upwards reduces the temperature on the surface of the earth so it stays nice and cool and bearable. And storms also regulate the electrical balance between the atmosphere and the planet, so as far as I'm concerned, before delving into dreams and desires and awakening humans to the wonders all around them, the Nereids were very precise and technical in their approach to how their element is going to be integrated in the greater scheme of things and how it's going to serve the grand design, even if the other houses saw their work as pretty chaotic and mostly artistic. But they knew what they were doing, and of course we can imagine their knowledge of water and storm far exceeds mortals' understanding of such things, but is limited by mortals' understanding of such things, as we're about to see in the next dot. Command the storm. A Defiler can use this evocation to create weather patterns at will, conjuring a storm out of thin air or banishing a hurricane with a wave of her hand. System. Spend 1 faith and roll intelligence plus science. The difficulty is determined by the environment and the type of weather the Defiler wishes to create. Calling up a thunderstorm near the ocean is difficulty 6. Creating one in the middle of the Arizona desert is difficulty 9. Banishing existing weather patterns is resolved with a difficulty of 7. The number of successes rolled determines the intensity of the weather pattern that the Defiler can create or calm. A rain shower or a light snowfall requires only 1 success, while a tornado or a massive hurricane requires 4 or more. This evocation affects an area within a radius in miles equal to the demon's faith score. Once summoned, the weather effect runs its natural course unless affected by additional evocations. Torment. Monstrous demons can command the weather with equal ease, but their effects are always inimical. Storms bring damaging wind, hail, and lightning. Even creating clear skies can invoke extreme temperature changes or suffocating humidity. Yup, fantastic. At this point, the Defiler doesn't just redirect or resize pre-existing weather, if we can put it that way, but they create it. We can imagine the effects of this evocation don't happen within a single turn, since, as mentioned previously, water needs to circulate in certain ways in order to affect the weather. So, I've always thought something like 15 or even 30 minutes should be a reasonable time for the evocation to really make itself felt, depending on pre-existing meteorological conditions and location. I strongly believe the effects cannot happen instantly. But wait, I can almost hear you scream. Why would the miracles known as lores act in accordance with science or the laws of nature as mortals understand them? Aren't they supposed to be the secrets of those who created the universe? Well, yes, absolutely, but the consensus we call reality, to make use of Mage the Ascension really quickly, is still affected by the faithful and the faithless alike, especially in this case, in the case of drastic meteorological changes that make no sense when the effects are observed by the entire mortal population of a city, hundreds of thousands of people, or even millions, the majority of which don't believe in the supernatural, as per demon setting. This faithlessness would absolutely affect some lores and only allow them to work within certain parameters if they work at all, if they can be evoked at all. We know from the core book, in some cases the fallen can't even assume their apocalyptic forms should they find themselves in the presence of deeply faithless individuals, what the core book calls spiritual voids. So this is definitely something both storyteller and players should consider, as the Defiler tries turning an otherwise perfectly sunny day into a dark, rainy, grey mess which makes everyone drowsy, or as the Defiler banishes a thunderstorm, clearing up the sky, letting everyone enjoy the warm light of the sun. Entirely possible using this evocation, but the effects cannot happen instantly. Now, mechanically, the effects of various types of weather aren't clearly described, but as mentioned before, we can imagine they assist or hinder certain activities. It's probably much harder to trail someone during a storm due to poor visibility and difficulty moving about in the cold, heavy rain than it is to stealthily keep an eye on someone on a clear and warm, moonlit night when everyone is out and about. I always encourage players not just to describe what the character is doing and narrate what happens, but also to tell me, unless the effect is specifically mentioned in the book, what they expect the effects to be, mechanically. Because if I can tweak the rules a bit and play into what they want, I gladly will. Reduce or increase temperature, reduce or increase visibility, eerie fog, or aggressive thick rainfall. How do you want to do this? How do you picture a particular type of weather affecting things? And this is a very good question because in conjunction with the previous evocation, the Defiler has a very solid degree of control over this, in a radius of miles equal to faith score. Really, really good. Final dot. Invoke the storm. The Defiler can surround herself with a raging storm at will, creating wind, water, and lightning in an area as small as a room or as large as a city block. The heart of the storm is centered on the demon, and it moves as she moves. It causes her no harm, though. System: spend 1 faith point and roll stamina plus survival. The difficulty is determined by the environment the Defiler is in. Conjuring a storm outside with rain clouds overhead is difficulty 6. Conjuring a storm in the air-conditioned environment of an office is difficulty 9. The successes form a dice pool that you roll while your character directs the effects of the storm. If she wishes to use wind to knock someone down or blow open doors and windows, roll this dice pool instead of strength. If she wants to fire lightning at the target, roll the pool against the difficulty of 9. Each success generates 1 lightning bolt that strikes the target automatically and imposes a number of lethal damage dice equal to the Defiler's torment score. The storm affects an area with a radius in yards equal to the character's faith score and lasts for an equal number of turns unless banished. Torment. Monstrous demons raise storms that lash out indiscriminately at any living being caught in the area, punishing them with fierce winds and lightning. Each turn, roll a single die, difficulty 9, for each person within the storm's radius. If a roll is successful, someone is struck with a bolt of lightning. Furthermore, the buffeting winds increase the difficulties of all subjects' actions by 2. Alright, a very flashy evocation, especially when performed in an office full of people, but I guess that's why the difficulty goes up to 9 in that particular case, to account for the fact that conjuring a storm using air conditioning and a water cooler is very unlikely. Also, having a storm that only affects a few yards really doesn't make sense outdoors. Nah. Personally, I see this evocation as the crown jewel of this lore, utilized outdoors during a storm the Defiler conjured up some half an hour ago using previous evocations, and I see them almost as a conductor whose orchestra consists of lightning strikes, freezing rain, and howling winds. The effects of this power should have no range. They should be applied anywhere within the storm and basically within the Defiler's line of sight. That would make so much more sense to me. You just sit there in the eye of the storm like a ruler on the throne and let your pet tempest blow your enemies away. This is one of the rare instances in which using Torment as the damage pool for the lightning strikes sort of makes sense. I can see the reason behind it, because that kind of manifestation is predominantly used for less than benevolent purposes, but it's still underwhelming when a character who's done their absolute best to keep their torment in check needs to fight the big fight against a seriously evil antagonist. They roll at a difficulty of 9, right? And they get 2 damage per each roll. I mean, if torment to damage is a little underwhelming for you, as it is for me, maybe just use the permanent faith rating or a fixed damage pool determined by the storyteller. Needless to say, the high torment version can be absolutely devastating, and the best part about this whole evocation here is that the character can use water form right after invoking the storm. Defiler 1, everyone else 0. So not only is the Nereid calling lightning strikes left and right, but they are immune to all damage for a few turns. Splendid. Let's take a look at the apocalyptic form next. Adad, the Visage of Storms. The angels of the storm are tall, statuesque figures, their skins glistening like opal, and their dark hair tinged with the deep green of the ocean depths. Blue flickers of ball lightning writhe and dance across their bodies, forming an angry nimbus surrounding their head and shoulders when their fury is aroused. The Visage of Storm confers the following special capabilities. Weather Sense. The character can always intuitively sense changes in the weather up to a distance of 10 miles times her faith score. Immune to electricity. The character is immune to damage inflicted by electrocution. Improved initiative. Add 2 to the character's initiative. Shocking touch. The character's touch inflicts a number of bashing levels of damage equal to her faith score. This special capability may be used only once per scene. Torment. Angels of the Storm who lose themselves to their demonic nature develop a rough, gray hide and triple rows of razor-edged teeth. Their eyes are featureless black orbs, devoid of warmth or compassion. The Visage of Storms confers the following High Torment special capabilities. Teeth. The demon manifests fangs that inflict strength +2 aggravated damage. Spines. A long ruff of spines runs down the demon's back and along the backs of her arms. She inflicts an additional health level of aggravated damage with every successful attack in unarmed combat. Shark hide. The demon's shark-like skin acts as armor, providing 4 additional dice to soak bashing, lethal, and aggravated damage. Ink cloud. The demon can expel a cloud of indigo ink that hangs in the air and blinds her foes. Individuals within a number of feet equal to the demon's faith score are blinded for a number of turns equal to the demon's torment unless a successful stamina roll is made. The cloud of ink lingers for a number of turns equal to the demon's torment. Victims are subject to the blind fighting rules on page 240. Weather Sense is great for facilitating the use of the 3rd evocation if the 4th isn't available yet. And improved initiative makes a lot of sense here, since we are talking about the architects of storms, those who read and twist the weather to their own bidding, those who carefully control the very playing field itself. But on the downside, each storyteller better have weather information on hand or a random weather generator, because the player is probably going to want to be constantly updated, since this is the thing their character controls best, the weather. Immune to electricity renders uses of Invoke the Storm useless against other Defilers who bear this visage, so we can imagine a physical confrontation between members of the same house is going to get visceral, up and close, personal, and probably very creative, which is lovely. But Shocking Touch is seriously underwhelming. For a starting character, that's 3 bashing damage once per scene. Regular, non-supernatural electrical damage is lethal, according to the core book, and, well, again, this form can only be used once per scene. Why turn it into bashing damage? That makes no sense. An interesting idea here would be to let the character recharge this ability by leeching off of electrical sources, possibly damaging them in the process. I mean, what's really stopping an Adad from recharging their form if power sources are nearby? They are immune to electrical damage, so why wouldn't they recharge from the nearest power socket? It should be an option, at least. There's also no mention of how this impacts other electrical items like computers, screens, phones, and so on. But yeah, we can imagine the Defiler can absolutely trash these items with a simple touch. Couple this apocalyptic form with the water form Evocation, and you have an electrical puddle immune to any harm. Insane. The High Torment forms imprison the graceful, somewhat benevolent Stormbringer inside the form of an aquatic monstrosity. banished to the bottom of the oceans in absence of any of the beings they once loved, almost resembling the form of a devourer more than a watery malefactor. We can see in this a reflection of the Defiler's labors, moving from highly technical interaction between a plethora of physical phenomena to engineering the cold-blooded beings of the deeps, the things which populate the oceans away from mortal eyes. Teeth, spines, and shark hide are great, turning the tormented Adad into a very resilient and very destructive beast. And Ink Cloud is something that can throw off any attackers, while the Defiler assumes apocalyptic form, or gets in a devastating attack, or just vanishes before anyone can figure out exactly what happened, leaving nothing but a pile of clothes on the floor. But that being said, I'm not sure why it's a high torment form. The effects of this ability alone, by themselves, are clearly harmless. I mean, they are predominantly used in evasion, as the target is blinded for a few turns. Now, if the ink had also been poisonous, then I would have definitely understood why it's a high torment form. So there we have it. The lore of storms, the Defiler's ability to conjure and turn into water, to influence and summon certain types of weather, and finally to become the eye of a storm that is completely within their control. From benevolent bringers of rain to aquatic atrocities, the Adad are the most interesting, mysterious, and occasionally confusing visage of the Defilers, and I find it absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, have fun, and don't forget to play.